Greetings Guardians, my name is Bife here. Before I start this video, right now I think it's worth saying that I'm actively not trying to ruin people's fun. Yes, Into the Light is coming out, and that is actually something that I'm also excited for, and it feels really weird for me to create a video right now critiquing something in Destiny when, for all intents and purposes, the community sentiment is actually at a high for the first time in ages. Regardless of whether you think the last community sentiment high was during the Season of the Witch, or whether it was all the way back in the end of the Season of the Seraph, just before Lightfall, I think it's fair to say that right now, it feels like a very long time since we've all had a very positive image of Destiny in our minds. And for those of you who are glad and who have been tired of all of the doom and gloom that has been sparked around the game in conversation and discussion all the time, I am not here to ruin this moment. I am not here to ruin your fun. Like you, I am excited for Into the Light. I mean, who wouldn't be? It's a free update, even if you're not playing the game. That's fine, it doesn't affect you. The point is this: I don't want to ruin anyone's fun here. I want to critique in this moment and to throw this out there purely because of the fact that it is about improving the game for me, and it is not about trying to actively ruin people's experiences. I just want to go ahead and say that right now because I am aware of the fact that it's been a long time since we've all been in a positive place about this. So yeah, for those of you who are looking at this video and being like, why the hell is he talking about something like this right now? Don't worry, I promise this is me trying to be responsible with this conversation. So with that in mind, today I wanted to talk about the idea of mystery in a game. To put it really simply, mystery, I think, relies on questions being asked, then questions being answered, and then those answers leading to further questions. It's a really delicate balance in games, and effectively I think that at the moment in Destiny there is an imbalance there that is inherent, partly due to where we are in the story's narrative of this first saga, but also because of the fact that we have been seeing less of it in recent days. So let's jump into that and explain the opening idea, because what is mystery in a game is something you could go on about for a while, but ultimately it does come back to that definition of questions and answers to me, and that's what I really love about a good universe that has really great foundational lore. It interests you because it makes you ask questions. Those questions don't need to be fundamental or life-changing or revelatory, they can just be, hey, who was Saint 14? Or, hey, who are the Iron Lords? Or, hey, what's going on with this group of people over there? What happened at this particular event? These are questions that, to me, are really tantalizing, and Destiny has unpacked various forms of these questions over and over again for years now, and obviously it hasn't always been perfectly balanced, for a bunch of different reasons. Take the very beginning of Destiny's life cycle, in literally the first year of Destiny 1. Needless to say, there were always going to be more questions around about that time because everything was fresh and new. And ever since then, Destiny has gradually segmented its unpacking of these different topics. We didn't know a ton about the Cabal until we eventually got the Red War expansion, and yeah, we learned a little bit here and there from Destiny 1, but the Red War told us a whole lot about the way that the Cabal society used to exist, and, well, the upheaval that happened with the Midnight Coup. All of this is just an example of saying that, hey, Destiny has been good at answering those questions over time, but the approach has had to be segmented. If you're reading Dune, you learn all that you need to in the story about Arrakis, the mysteries of spice, etc., just by reading the one book. At very least, relative to that one story. I know that if you want to know about the Golden Path and everything else, sure, read the rest. But for the most part, yeah, the answers to the questions that are being raised in that single book. To put Destiny into Dune terms, this would be a little bit like sitting there and saying, okay, we can only get answers on Arrakis when the Arrakis expansion comes up. So it has felt a little bit more segmented. It doesn't mean that the answers in those segments have been any less fantastic, though. The focus that Destiny has given on each of its expansions to particular topics means that we've also been able to get focused moments where the universe deep dives into questions and answers on particular topics, which I don't think would be possible in other mediums. It shows the real strength of live services for this particular method of storytelling. But why am I bringing all of this to you in the first place? Well, the reason I'm saying it is because in this particular moment where we are in our live service journey, just ahead of the final shape, I think there are too few questions that are potentially going to be asked in the future. We are sort of feeling like mystery is a little bit threadbare. Now, to be really clear about that, again, we are currently in that place where in Destiny's life cycle and Destiny's journey, we are kind of at the place where questions don't need to belong. Answers are the key here. We're about to go into the final confrontation with the witness, and ultimately that means that, well, if we're going to sit there and continue to ask new questions of things, they would feel a little out of place. I think what concerns me is what comes afterwards, and where things will go from here. You see, when it comes to the original times of Destiny 1 Year 1, I could sit there and I could see 10,000 different directions for Destiny as a franchise. And why? Well, because the lore was just expansive and nobody knew anything. I mean, take a look at the City Age Grimoire card from all the way back in Destiny 1. In just a few paragraphs, it lays out the ideas for foundational legends like Saint 14, the Iron Lords, the Great Disaster, Toland, and a ton of other story beats. Each of these topics would get explored in either seasons or expansions or exotic missions later down the line, but by the time that we'd all learned about them properly, these names were mythical even in their own right. It meant that when we did get something like Season of Dawn, where Saint 14 returned, it was this incredible hype moment where everybody sat there and realized that we were resurrecting a legend, someone who we'd only ever heard stories about, someone who defined some of our own character stories. I know that that was definitely the case for a bunch of Titans. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I remember an Astacross video back in the day when Season of Dawn launched, where he sat there and said, I do not know all the lore of this character, but let me tell you, he is the Titan of all Titans. And he was talking about Saint. If someone who at the time was pretty engrossed in the game but didn't maybe know all of the lore has jumped in there and has still cited them as being a well-recognized legend, then I think there is something special there that shows the reason why all of this mystery is important. Players don't just play the game because they like the gameplay. Some players will stick around in a universe because ultimately that universe provides them with wonder. That universe provides them with ideas that keep them around and that inspire them. And that ultimately is why mystery is important in my mind. It's this idea that allows you to attach yourself to a narrative more effectively. It lets you invest in it. As a result, I think Destiny has actually done a really good job over 10 years of making sure that there are continual mysteries within its mythos and its universe. And to be honest, not all of them have emerged in a successful and satisfying manner, so it isn't universally a thing of credit. I mean, take a look at the arrival of Oryx and the setup for everything to do with the Hive, compared to Rasputin's return in the Warmind DLC. There are some really clear differences you can draw with the nature of those two reveals, and the way that they answered some questions, and the way that they posed further questions. When it came to Oryx, you sat there and saw things like the Books of Sorrow do an incredible amount of heavy lifting alongside the campaign. And they meant that not only did you get answers to some of those foundational questions, like what are the origins of the Hive, but also you had a whole plethora of new questions to ask that unfurled from that. The Books of Sorrow may be a perspective and may kind of be based on a lie, but they made us ask more questions about the universe of Destiny. Who was Oryx talking to in the darkness after he destroyed the Taisha Beth? Did anyone from any culture that Oryx encountered survive? What was the ultimate fate of Teox? What about Savathun and Xivu Arath? Note the flow of question to answer to further question. What is the origin of the Hive? This is the origin, it's explained in the Books of Sorrow. The books also talked about these things. What about those? That is how you should keep the flow going. But ultimately, even in those moments where it hasn't really gone well, Bungie has been able to make sure that mysteries are repeatedly capable of enlightening us and showing up in Destiny's universe. There are actions and actors in Destiny's worlds that will continuously have us asking, what happens next? And I think that that has always been the strength of Destiny. But now, as we approach Final Shape, I think we're in a very weird position. Suddenly, again, we are running out of road. Now, I've said this a few times. That's probably for the better. Not for the sake of the idea that Destiny as a whole is ending, which, for the record, I don't believe is true. I mean, financially, it just makes no sense. I think that it's just more important to have answers right now, and I think that that is the correct priority. But I also think about what comes next, because after we have defeated the Witness, there is always a question of where does the mystery lead us to next? And even to answer this question, I think there are plenty of plot threads that are clearly hanging there waiting to be tied up by Bungie in moments which will unfurl even further. Keitel is here in the system, and talk of retaking Torobatl has always been a part of the Cabal's story ever since her arrival back in the Season of the Chosen. The Eliksni and their place in Reese or here in Sol is still a question that openly needs to be answered, and a similar campaign to retake and refound Reese is not out of the question either. There's also the unresolved mystery of whether the Kell of Kells will actually be a thing that gets chosen. And beyond all of that, the Hive Gods are still out there. Xivu Arath may have been banished from her own throne world and may be tied up in that Cabal story, but Savathun is back too. And she may be using the light now, but there are also fundamental changes going on within the Hive, to the point where some of them don't necessarily seem to need the sword logic to survive or grow stronger. That is worth talking about. That is worth building future expansions or quest lines or episodes into, because those are interesting questions. And heck, those are just the ones that are immediately iconic to me. I have no clue what Bungie will do with the Vex, and I imagine that based on the idea of the Revenant episode alone, that there is a big story they want to tell with Fikrul, probably with Crow, and with the Scorn more generally. Destiny is not going to run out of stories anytime soon, but I feel as though it is starting to run out of some of those mysteries that would really prompt us to ask more. You see, Destiny is at its best, I feel, when it has those continual questions in the background, where we don't necessarily have all the answers just yet, and yet it's clear that we may get some in the future. And I think this is something which is really clear when you look at the previous lore entries that we got in previous seasons and expansions and compare them to now. This bridges a little bit more into a different topic about the actual quantity of lore in the game and how it's decreased over time, something which I made an entire video about and have been sitting on for a few months just so that I can find a good time to release it. But I think the greater point is this: mysteries need to be a part of Destiny's emphasis within the lore as well, and I feel as though it just makes the tapestry of the game that much richer. And to really emphasize this, I think that we can take a look at an old lore book which tells us a whole bunch. And that is Stolen Intelligence. Stolen Intelligence is a lore book that was released in the Season of the Drifter, and aside from one, maybe two entries, it has nothing to do with the story of the Season of the Drifter. But it sets up a ton of interesting bits of lore and a ton of myths and legends. For context, Stolen Intelligence is basically a bunch of Vanguard reports from hidden agents that we've tapped into and stolen for our own reading. The amazing thing about this is that these lead to interesting story beats sometimes, and in other instances, they haven't been answered. There is a moment where Fenchurch basically runs into a thrall on the moon that had a bit of Hive rock encrusted onto it, and when he touched it, he saw a little bit of what happened with Eris and Mara on a separate journey they made to the outer system, where they might have destroyed a pyramid ship. That's a cool story all on its own, and it's all told through backlore, and it's all presented here. Will that have future ramifications? I don't know, but it certainly has an incredible idea at its core. The implications might already have passed for that particular story, but even if they hadn't, it's an amazing little bit of background. Take another thing, for example, the Cocytus Apertures and how they relate to the Nine. These are gateways that I've talked about a bunch of different times in a bunch of different lore videos, but essentially, when it comes down to it, the Cocytus Apertures have never been truly expanded on in great detail beyond some of the lore of that particular season of the Drifter. And when it comes down to the Nine, there is very little that we know. The last real interaction we had with them was back in Prophecy during the Season of Arrivals. The point is this: Stolen Intelligence doesn't have anything to do with the season that it comes from, but it has everything to do with expanding the universe of Destiny outside those particular bounds. And we haven't seen something like that in a very long time. We've perhaps seen individual bits and pieces of lore, and we haven't been able to necessarily piece them together here and there, But I feel as though there hasn't been a big focus on the future mysteries within the lore in a while. And I feel like it's because rightly we've all been focused on the Witness and the upcoming confrontation that we're going to have with it. The lore is squarely focused on this, and any stories that happen to be on the side whilst that's going on are either being kept firmly on the sidelines or are incorporated into major seasons as a part of this big plot. You can bet we wouldn't be talking about Ahamkara if we didn't need Riven in order to access the Pale Heart of the Traveler. So with all of that in mind, I guess what I'm saying is I would love to see a slight shift in focus when it comes to the narrative team and what they're doing with regards to building out the wider lore of the universe of Destiny. This is something where, obviously, nothing is going to be changed in time for Final Shape because all of that work has been done and dusted for a while now. When it comes down to it though, I want this to be a bit of critique that's out there that hopefully influences the future, because Stolen Intelligence is just one example of this. There are tons of different lore books and pieces of information out there that generally don't get as much hype as they deserve, but ultimately lead us to incredible questions. Those questions are the things that create mystery, and for me, that's part of what keeps me around in Destiny. I imagine it's not the same for every player, just like some people don't like the Crucible and some people aren't into endgame content, but ultimately, the world has hooks, and that's part of the reason why, for me at least, I've stuck around for as long as I have. I knew that there was more to Destiny than the vanilla story. If I thought there wasn't as much to do with it than that, I would have quit after Dark Below, but I knew there was more. The idea of Crota and the idea that his father might come to avenge him, there was more to it there, and that left me fascinated. I wanted to prepare, because I knew that at some point we would be facing Oryx. I didn't know it was going to be in Taken King, but boy oh boy, when I saw it happen, it was rather something. So if I'm going to summarize, my critique here comes down to this. The focus on ensuring that Destiny is a universe that is still filled with mystery should be a little bit more at the forefront. I completely understand that where we are right now in the Final Shape requires that we answer these questions at the front and center. But as time goes on, we need to continue to insert more mystery into Destiny's world. We need more questions. Now that we are about to head into the Time of Answers, this will be critique that I think is important for the time afterwards, when we have to expand back out into the world of Destiny. Does that mean we leave the solar system? Who knows? Does that mean we explore whole new alien races? Who knows? But the point is this, it's all about the questions and it's all about the mystery. I want to see the world with more questions. So, to do that, I think that there's two things that need to be done. First of all, the actual quantity of lore in the game should be increased. And I have an entire video talking about that at some point in the near future too, so that'll be another piece of critique that I release at some point soon. The other thing as well I would say is that when Final Shape is done, it's okay for the focus to shift a little bit. Lay ground for the future again, because whilst we have some clear roadmaps leading to places like Tora Bartle and Xivu Arath's final confrontation with us, I think that there is also a very important set of questions that needs to be asked in the first place, which will keep us around for the expansions after that. In other words, where are the next places that we'll go? What's going to happen next? Let's go ahead and get some more of that out in front, because whilst we do have clear directions and clear storylines that are going to be tied up, right now I feel as though the world of Destiny feels a little bit more known than it should. I don't know if you all agree with me. I don't even know if this topic is going to be something that's hugely popular as far as a video is concerned, but I felt like I needed to put this out there, and I felt like this was the right time. I know, I don't want to get people down in this moment just ahead of the release of Into the Light, when everyone is actually at a positive sentiment for the game. And hopefully you guys understand that and you know that I'm putting this out there in good faith. With all of that being said, leave your own thoughts down below in the comments section. What do you think? Does Destiny have enough mystery to sustain you right now? I personally feel like more questions need to be asked. Maybe you think even more need to be answered and that I'm completely wrong. If that is the case, that's a valuable perspective, so let me know. Let it be known, because I know that when it comes down to critique, the narrative team listens to stuff like this. They look through the comments section. They understand what's going on. So yeah, do consider leaving those thoughts. If you want more Destiny lore content from everything that's coming up, from the Final Shape to Into the Light, just go ahead and hit subscribe and the bell next to subscribe to turn on those email notifications. And of course, it does also help if you leave a like on this video, serving the algorithm gods as we can in our own small, nonsensical way. But as per usual, know that your viewership as always is still quite enough for me, and that in the meantime, my name is Byf. Por audacia ad astra. I'll see you, Starside.